I froze to death in a park. A mid-30s bald man with a scar on his right temple warmed his hands at my fire. Almost flame blue in complexion, soiled clothes hung off his thin frame. It smelled like someone had emptied a rubbish bin in my lounge. "I can't feel the heat," Pascal said. "That is not the type of fire you are used to." "It's a fire, isn't it? It's supposed to be hot." Pascal moved back to the armchair and sat down. "Its heat is tempered here, otherwise you would not be able to sit in that chair for long," I said. "Yeah, well, I can't feel anything. There's something wrong with it. You should get it checked out." I watched Pascal, kept my eyes focused on him. He turned and looked at Hamish, who was sat on the skirting above the curtains. "He found me and brought me here. He told me that I needed to see you before it's too late." "What's he on about?" "Pascal, you are on the cusp of becoming a wraith. If you did, we would not be having this conversation right now, and you would be taken through a door." Pascal looked at me. "A wraith is pure anger, unfiltered. No remorse, just a being, at its most primal state. You cannot reason with them, but they are not interested in anything but hurting others." I looked at Hamish. "He brought you here before you crossed that line. He did you a good service. Tell me how you died." Pascal looked at the flames in the fireplace. "Mum got a restraining order out against me. Dad didn't want to, but Mum made him. Couldn't go anywhere near home or I'd be arrested. My sister turfed me out too. She didn't want a bar of me. She was always a little bitch anyway." Pascal looked at his pale hands. Blue veins showed through the skin. I wasn't decent to them, but still they shouldn't have thrown me out. I had nowhere to go, so this. Pascal held up his hands, his fingers curved against the bone. "This is what cold does. It hurts, trust me. What happened to me is on them. I hope they suffer for it." Pascal's face dried and shrunk to reveal a dark bone skeleton. Eyes became pits with red bulbs. Body mass burnt away to reveal a black bone skeleton with long talons extended from his fingers and discolored sharp teeth protruding from his mouth. He exuded tiny particles that appeared as black mist as his face faded between that of Pascal and a wraith. Hamish jumped down from his seat and landed between Pascal and myself. Pascal watched him, baring his teeth. "Pascal, Hamish is ready to drag you down to a wasteland beyond a door. I urge you to remember what he told you." "Rip!" Pascal lashed out at Hamish, who leapt on him. Hamish transformed into a black cat the size of a Siberian tiger. Blue fire crackled from his fur. Snap! He gripped Pascal's neck in his giant mouth. "One last time, Pascal. Sit and tell me what happened or be dragged away." Pascal ripped at Hamish with his claws. Hamish spit down. Pascal whimpered. "Hamish, it's no use. Let's toss him through the door." Pascal, still in wraith form, clawed at Hamish, but Hamish's fur held fast, protecting him. I strode out the lounge and turned left. Hamish pulled Pascal out of the room. Down a flight of stairs, I turned right to the end of the corridor, where I turned left and walked to the last door on the right. Hamish followed with Pascal still in his mouth. He was still clawing at Hamish, but he had no effect. Hamish roared. It echoed in the house. Pascal whimpered again. The human Pascal, or rather the apparition, was gone. Only a wraith remained. I opened the door to reveal a barren wasteland where nothing grows. A long howl was heard. A being part matter, part shadow zipped past the door. It turned and watched us. It had red eyes. Baring its discolored teeth, it gunned for us. Hamish tossed Pascal through the door. He landed forming instantly into a shadow. Pascal came at us. Hamish's roar blew through the door, blasting him and the other wraith miles back. I shut the door. Hamish transformed back into a ginger cat. He sauntered off upstairs. I followed suit and returned to the lounge and sat down. Sometimes it happens like that. As I said before, you cannot reason with a wraith, and Pascal became one right here in the lounge. I do know his story, so I shall recount it for you. Pascal used the love his parents gave him against them. He was not interested in their welfare, rather just their money to support his lifestyle. To give you an example, his father sat him down at the dining table and told him that he had cancer. Pascal's response? So what? What do you want me to do? It didn't end there. Once his parents questioned his behavior and tried to counsel him to get himself a job or pursue further education, he turned violent, slammed, pushed his mother down the stairs. His father tried to stop him, but he jumped on him and buried his fist into the old man's face repeatedly. Outbursts of violence were followed by panic, sorrow, and tears, crying as he apologized. But that only lasted a day or two. After that, he was back to his old tricks. Violence came naturally to him. His parents were prisoners in their own house. It took his mother threatening suicide to his father for him to obtain a restraining order against Pascal. That night, as Pascal returned home, he was confronted by the police. Against a bigger person, his behavior was meek. Grabbing a few things from his room, he left without a word. He went to his sister Sonia's flat and pleaded to be let in, but his sister was wiser than his parents. She turned him away. Pascal screamed threats of death at her and her husband before he strode off. Sitting alone outside, in the cold, with nobody around, the 33-year-old man realized for the first time that he was a lousy human being. The few persons he called friends turned their back on him. Others he owed money to, so he didn't go to them. He even got into an altercation at a 7-Eleven, which resulted in a broken bottle being shoved into his temple. Pascal called his sister from hospital, weeping on the phone. She told him to sort his life out. He tried his parents. His father was willing to take him back, but his mother was not. Pascal was released a few days later on a winter night. He had nowhere to go, so he spent his first night behind an industrial bin in an alley. Foraging food from the bins, he ate whatever was there. He used the last of his money to phone his father to beg him to let him back in the house. His mother could not stomach Pascal anymore after she witnessed him burying his fist into his father's face repeatedly. The poor man was already frail, and for Pascal to do that to his own father, his mother would never forgive him. The following night, Pascal tried to get accommodation in a shelter. However, his mouth proved to be his undoing. He got into an argument telling the admin clerk at reception how to do his job. He spent the second night outside, again in the cold. He managed to persuade another homeless man to share his duvet. Pascal then left in the morning and returned home. He rang the doorbell only for his mother to call the police. He told her he was going to kill her if she didn't let him in. His mother stood firm. He shouted for his father, but his father did not come to the door. Slam! Pascal broke the glass in the door. Neighbors came out to see what the commotion was. One of them called the police. So once again, Pascal left, hurriedly. That night he spent behind the gents' toilet in the park. There wasn't much shelter, but the wall provided a bit of security and a shield against the wind. The next morning, he remained asleep. He was hit by sharp pains along his extremities. Blood vessels constricted, preventing blood flow through them. They became brittle. One by one, his organs ceased to function as hypothermia set in. Deep. He didn't even shiver. He kept mumbling to himself. The temperature dropped further that evening. By morning, Pascal was dead. His skin pale, his veins showed through. They matched the color of his lips. His eyes crystallized. Pascal awakened, shrieking. Shadow particles wafted off his being as he rose out of his body, an apparition. He screamed again. Shadow particles multiplied around him, creating a mist that was part matter, part apparition. Red bulbs formed in the pits of his eyes. Shifting towards the path of the sound of footsteps, Pascal stopped, face on, at a woman jogging towards him. She kept coming. He looked at her. Mouth open, he screamed. The woman halted, grabbing her ears. She looked around, then straight at Pascal, but she could not see him. Pascal shifted to her, nose to nose. "Sonia," he hissed. The woman crouched, holding her ears. Snap. Pascal bit her neck. The woman arched her back in pain. She couldn't move. He dragged her body behind the gents' toilet and tossed her where his husk was. Rip, he stuck his claw into her body, grabbing her heart. He watched her, eyes wide, as he fused frost into the muscle. Blood and organ crystallized immediately. Crack, it splintered. Shatter, it collapsed into his hand. Eyes and mouth open, pale blue, the woman lay there, dead. Her body was completely intact, her heart shattered on the inside. Pascal looked at her face. He shrieked. He went on to find his mother parking her car at home. She did not leave the vehicle. Before Pascal shattered her heart, he crushed her windpipe, preventing her from screaming. Broke both her wrists to prevent her from leaving. Nose to nose, he transformed back to show his mother who was doing the damage to her. He then stuck his claw inside her body. Grabbing her heart, he froze it. Crack, it was over. Pascal then went inside his house and found his father. He was more angry with him than his mother. When he was done, Pascal's father's left arm was in the kitchen, and his right was in the lounge, both crystallized, frozen. His body was on the lounge floor, his eyeballs shattered in their eye sockets, his heart frozen. The lounge destroyed. It was as if a hurricane had passed through it. Pascal was gone. Hamish waited for him as he returned to his carcass behind the gents' toilet. Pascal had already been to see his sister Sonia, but she wasn't home. He shrieked when he saw Hamish, but the ginger cat remained unperturbed. Hamish channeled his thoughts, allowing Pascal to hear them. When you hear Hamish speak, it is like you see color for the first time. Pascal calmed. He reverted back to the shadow apparition he was when he died. Human-looking, only pale blue. Hamish watched him. There was some regret there. He reminded Pascal that he did love his parents once, irrespective of how he feels about them now. It is this memory of love that holds him at the edge of the abyss of becoming a full wraith. He still has a chance to atone. The alternative is full wraith, from which it is a rare soul that returns. Most get consumed by anger and rage, burn away. It is very difficult indeed. Pascal watched Hamish. I need to see Sonia first, he said. Hamish shook his head. Sharp discolored teeth protruded from Pascal's mouth. His eyes decreased to red tiny buds. Black dust wafted around his ebony black bones. Part apparition, part matter. Talons extended from his fingertips. Pascal snatched at Hamish. Hamish roared. A sound flattened Pascal. Hamish transformed into a feline the size of a Siberian tiger. Blue fire crackled from his fur. It matched the color of his eyes. Hamish roared again. Pascal screeched. Snap. Hamish grabbed Pascal by the neck. He whimpered as he reverted back to his pale form. Hamish dragged Pascal to the halfway house. He was not a willing guest. However, I extended a chance for him to tell me his story. He chose otherwise. Wraiths are destructive souls. They desire to hurt others because of one simple notion. They believe they are right and the world should act according to them. When this does not occur, they become angry and petty. They decrease their world to those individuals who love them and will tolerate their behavior. Unfortunately, the Wraith's family seldom survive them. Wraiths are born out of selfish individuals. I don't mean a selfish act here and there, rather an individual who is selfish to the core. The word toxic springs to mind. Even when human, they spread negativity. Pascal is a wraith in a wasteland now. There are many others like him there, and they will remain there until their anger and rage dissipates. At this time, if a wraith's rage and anger have not consumed them fully, and a spark of humanity remains, a wraith could return through the door. In all my time here, I have never opened the door to let a former wraith out. I hope it does occur on my watch. I will say this. It was up to Pascal to tell me his story, but he didn't want to. Instead, he was angry. That cannot go without comment. Stay safe. Don't die in your sleep. See you next Sunday at 11. Godspeed.